Okay, I think we're gonna get started, folks. And if you don't find seats, well, there's plenty also here, and feel free to move the rollable things to find comfort. And there are 4 seats here in the front. If you want, there are 4 seats over here. Oh, actually 5 over there, I can see. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Daria. I am the founder of Imperfecta Gallery, and it's my honor today to introduce you to this wonderful talk by these 2 wonderful human beings that happen to be my life. Like people talk about art and poetry, visual arts, and different forms of art. They have a power of telling stories that sometimes are hard to describe otherwise. I think poetry and visual arts have got the ability of make you give a little bit of goosebumps, and sometimes you can't even put words to describe why, but you know the feeling, right? And I think this is wonderful opportunity for all of us, certainly it is for me, to have these wonderful artists here to share a bit of their stories of how they come to be next to each other as friends, but also more importantly about the book that Stacy has with the beautiful artwork that you see over there by Wynter. So they're going to tell you everything about themselves and their artworks, and I'm not going to dwell too much on that one. But I just wanted to thank them. I want to thank Stacy for the opportunity to have you doing this poetry reading here in my gallery. It's very special to me. And of course, it's very special, extra special cherry on the top, because Wynter over the years has become a very dear friend to me. I really admire her as an artist. And of course, now I admire you too. And what a joy to have you both here. Okay, and we're going to have a format where I'm going to try to help out, but we're going to have a format with both Stacy. Welcome in, there are 3 seats over here. Please make yourself at home. Hey, hi, how's it going? I know you. Good to see you. So we're going to have a format where we're going to have Stacy to tell you a little bit about her wonderful book and, read inspiration, etc. And then we're going to pass it to Wynter. She's going to tell you about her art. And then after that, we're going to bounce it back to Stacy. She's going to do reading for you. And then really, I hope you'll be very generous with your question. Usually people are very, very generous here. They ask wonderful questions to our artists. This is an opportunity to learn more and to learn with each other. And so thank you again for being here, both of you, and thank you all of you for being here. And now we can get started.
Okay, first I'm going to take a picture of all of you, because I feel like people always take a picture of me in the front, and this is what I remember. So smile. Oh, that's really good. Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm visiting here from Moscow, Idaho. I'm a poet. This is my first book. And Wynter and I have been talking the last couple of days about. Oh, wait 1 minute. Yeah. Okay.
Just giving you more seats.
That sounds good. I can also stand up if it helps you hear me.
No, just because it's
okay. Just tell me. You need more to stand up. That's great. I know. We were talking about. I actually need to stand up just because I can't see the people in the back. I want to make awkward eye contact with all of you. We were talking about the way that poetry and art, like visual art, captures kind of the fragments of a story in a way that maybe a book doesn't. A book has like a beginning and a climax and an ending. And this book that I'm going to read from and that I have with me is really my story. And I resisted that for a long time as a poet, that I tend to write. Caitlin, who's up in the front, was in school with me, and I was often embarrassed that I'm always writing like my story in poems, because some people do stuff that isn't necessarily obviously tied to their life, but I've really grown to appreciate that's how I have processed my life through art. And I think the way that memory works is you kind of have all these pieces and fragments, and you don't think of it in a linear way usually. And I feel for me like that is what poems are. I enter them with a real aspect of curiosity. I think of there's a quote by Adrienne Rich that's, poems are like dreams. In them you put what you don't know you know. And for me that's been very true. I've learned my story, and who I am now looks back at my story. I've learned a lot of that through poetry. And so Wynter is a friend who I met through my partner and have been lucky enough to own some of her art. We have it hanging in our house in a few places. But when I saw this piece, I was looking for, you work with a publisher and you hope that either they'll pick the cover art, but you can suggest to them. And when I saw this piece, to me, it felt very much like that representation of the multiple selves and the fragments, and the some are so clear and some are fractions and some are faded. And then the bird and the hand, I'm always a bit superstitious and trying to read into everything and look for signs. And so for me, this visual art seemed like a perfect representation of what the excavating of my life and my story had been through this book. Let me just see if there was anything else I was going to say to you. A woman making sense of herself, I thought. When I saw this, I was like, oh, are we both women trying to make sense of ourselves?
Indeed.
And the title of this poem is To Be Good, and I explore, you'll hear a lot of themes of getting out of religion, growing up in a patriarchal Western religious culture, trying to be good. The last line of the first poem I read is that I just wanted so badly to be clean. There was a lot of like clean and dirty dichotomy. So I really resonated with Wynter's story, with her art, and then especially with this piece. So you can imagine how thrilled I am that this is on the front of my book and that I'm here with all of you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you so much, and I'm kind of excited to hear you read the poem in a minute. Yeah, I'm kind of putting things together personally, knowing Wynter, and now I'm kind of putting extra pieces of this beautiful puzzle, and thank you. Wynter, would you like to share a bit more about, from your perspective, of your painting and your story?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for wanting my art on your book. I think for me, there's the intersection between poetry and the painting process for me, as Stacy already mentioned, is so connected in the sense that my work is very fragmented. I don't approach my work with kind of an end game in mind, but rather a general idea. Creating is like a space for me to kind of rummage through the skeletons in my closet, so to say, or the unresolved conflicts and contradictions that just show up on a daily basis. I also, I grew up Mormon, very homogenous culture, and so this idea to be good and to be accepted. This piece in particular is really about the idea of feeling like you're always being watched. And whether that's God or it's men or it's just your community in general, but like how does that actually impact the way, like your own identity? And so for me, it's like removing all these layers of artificial layers, really, of myself that I have kind of internalized or created. As you can see, I can't even like really explain to you what this is. It's a process. Like it's a process of me like living in that space. And I want to capture that unresolved aspect of myself and those contradictions and that struggle to kind of reclaim myself in a way. Reclaim like, what is the true origin of myself? Where does it live? And a lot of that stuff is revealed to me through the process of painting and drawing, really. It's a time for me to kind of disassociate and that's all nothing I have written down, but there you go. I tried to be very strategic and like bullet points, and I didn't read one of them. So,
you want to read one of them?
No. Okay. There is this quote that I absolutely love by Mary Wollstonecraft, and it is for me it's just like the essence of my upbringing as a woman in a patriarchal Mormon culture. It is taught from infancy that beauty is a woman's spectre. The mind shapes itself to the body, and roaming around its gilded cage only seeks to adorn its prison. And so for me, it's like, how can I remove that so that I can,
Can you say it again slower, please?
yes. Taught from infancy that beauty is a woman's spectra. The mind shapes itself to the body, and roaming around its gilded cage, only seeks to adorn its prison. So the internalizing of those barriers, I don't know, the barriers, and yeah. So I'm just so, like, it has been so much fun talking to Stacy, because she came in last night, and it's so cool how we've been able to, our experiences, like, we're different from different places, somewhat, like, similar in the grand scheme of, like, the world and the hemisphere, but, you know, I was never a good reader growing up. Like, language arts was, like, my worst subject. I would space out. And so, it's just really cool that I can connect with you, because you are obviously a woman of words, and I'm
Too many.
Anyways, back to you, my friend.
I have to say, Wynter, I know you really dread talking in public, but I have to tell you, it's so beautiful what comes out of your mouth. It's really wonderful. You gave me a little bit of, I'm sure that everybody felt it, that moment, right? So, yeah, thank you. And so now perhaps we are ready maybe for Stacy's reading. Yeah, do you feel? Yes.
Just a little strong stuff for this. Okay, I am going to stand up to read. I hope that's okay. We were talking earlier too about, I can't remember if I was talking to you about this, but someone in here we were talking about people saying, about poetry, that sometimes they don't love poetry because they don't know what it means. And sometimes people will say the same thing about visual art. And I love what Daria said about sometimes you don't know why, but you're getting goosebumps when you hear a poem or when you see a piece of visual art. And I think that, like music, you don't have to know what something means to be moved by it or to have it resonate with you. And so I would just encourage you to be in that space while I read. I think one of the reasons, I've always loved this piece for the book, but then talking to Wynter the last 24 hours, I was like, wow, this piece could actually not be more perfect for the book. But I think for me, this book, one of the things it was doing was specifically giving, it has my whole family in it, but a ton of motherhood and a ton of the women I came from, because their stories were so unwritten and unseen, and they just had so little agency. Like, I believe that, from a young age, that the best thing I could do with my life, which it isn't a bad thing to do with your life, but was to get married and have babies. And we just all entered that space without a lot of forethought or intentionality. And so for me to make art and something that resonates with other people out of all of that feels like it replaces some of that lack of power or agency with a feeling of power and of beauty. And maybe for the women who came before me that also didn't get to do so. So I'm going to read for about 15 minutes just to warn you what you're getting into. Hypothetical. Let's say a kid goes to church camp every summer, sometimes sleeps on the top bunk, and some summers lifts her hands while singing, feels her fingers tingle, and knows there's a big beyond. Say sometimes the room becomes a river and this kid gets swept away. Maybe she's a stick in the current and she's sure one day this river will flood the whole world. Maybe it's made of a heavenly language she can suddenly speak, and that might be proof she's on the right track. Say one year the pastor holds up a cup of water, asks the kids if they would drink if he put in a drop, only a drop. Let's say he emphasizes that, of sewer water. Maybe he squeaks a marker across a whiteboard. Clean water mixed with dirty water equals dirty water. And he's clever, so uses a drop of blue food coloring. Say this kid is watching close how those tiny blue tendrils reach every way, and she's trying to wrap her hands around a river, keep that holy raging alive in her mind, and let's just go ahead and say she wants so badly, more than anything, to be clean. In the tree fort,
My sister gives me a cigarette, says I don't even have to inhale. I take in a cloud of a different world, blow it back out of my mouth. She doesn't know she'll soon tear up her knee, marry a man it will be smart to fear. Doesn't see herself calling our father from a gas station with only her purse and pajamas. I don't yet feel the pull I will toward the wrong kind of love. The demons my pastor will try to drive out, or the babies I'll birth, two slipping from me, just slivers of themselves. We watch my mother across the pasture, pinning our clothes to the line. She doesn't look up to see our legs dangle. Our fingers move to our lips, looking for what the world will offer, ready to answer with hunger. We were mothers, even before we were, lifting dirty pink shirts to cradle plastic babies to our flat chests. Feel, we'd say years later, in line for the swings and squeeze each other's small, sore breasts. Womanhood hidden but surely there, like the things Lorna said our parents did in their bedrooms. Sometimes we'd hold crayons between our fingers, take drags, blow up and away from their little faces, like we'd seen the good moms do. After dark, we snuck to our yards to peer in windows at our own mothers readying themselves for the night, slipping rings off into small bowls by their beds, pumping lotion into palms, and wringing their fingers over and over around soft hands. They pulled pins from tight updos and shook their heads, reaching into some secret place, a small latch below the left breast, a hidden button between pinky and ring finger, tiny lock behind an ear. They pried open doors only they knew. We watched our mothers draw from these small caves the birds that lived inside. Songbirds or magpies, sandpipers, crows. They stroked feathers or spoke gently. Some smiled, then all would tuck those creatures back into the dark. We closed our eyes and breathed in the night smell. We laid hands on our chests, wrists, ears, and wondered what, if ever that kind of thing were allowed, the birds of our mothers would sing. An altar in the world. I pick up a stone and name it every time you've hurt me. I keep it in my mouth, let it click against my teeth. The feather tangled in my hair is from a country called your father's dying. Someday I will be enough feather and tangle to lift myself away. The hawk scream through my window is my grandfather used to pray for me. Holy oil from a jar inside his shirt pocket rides the currents of my skin. Some things have no names yet. The pine arrow, the robin's beak, the washer I wear on a string that could break any moment. Okay, I'm gonna read this next one because Wynter and I talked about this poem last night, and she mentioned that we were always being watched by God, by angels. You were terrified when you masturbated, just in case there was some heavenly being watching you. We tried to get through sin really fast because we thought Jesus was coming back any moment, and so you had to hurry and repent before Jesus came back. But the funny thing about being watched all the time doesn't mean that you were seen in any kind of meaningful way. And I especially felt, I love being a mother, I love having a family, but I felt so lonely when I was 22 and a new mom home with a baby, and I'd been told my whole life, this is everything my life led up to, this is the biggest blessing, and that, I think of that experience all the way through just years of the hard things you go to, but you have to sort of pretend, or not pretend, but convince yourself that it's all God's will. And I absolutely have room, I hope I'm not offending religious people in the crowd. I have a lot of room for whatever your experience in life is, but this was mine. But just the feeling that so much of what you were going through, especially as a woman, you had to go through quietly because it was probably God's will and it was teaching you things. And so Wynter and I talked about this poem where you sort of just hope there is someone watching who's actually on your side, or like that your story matters in some way. The audience thinks I look lovely when I sleep, was furious when you said I need to lose weight. Stores sold out of tissue when I lost my baby. I'm careful to chew with my mouth closed. I stare out windows sometimes, rake my fingers through my hair, maybe brush them down my chest. I feel so sexy, they can tell. When I'm running, a song comes on I know they can hear. It's dramatic, the music, my steadfast look. They lean forward. We are all thinking of my marriage, the wings I almost grew. We remember my tears in the shower until the water ran cold and I shivered on the dirty orange floor. They are really on my side now. Some are crying and their chests begin to hurt. The beat keeps banging into them and I'm running so fast. I wrote that after going for a run and there was like this really great song in my ears. And you know that feeling when you're like, I'm in a movie. I think I'm in a movie.
Yeah.
You're not, but you feel it. This one starts with a quote by Buzz Aldrin. So the title is Thoughts from My Time on the Moon. Nothing prepares you for this darkness. Buzz Aldrin. Craters cast shadows like what might be missing. Boulders the size of small cars like what might be too much. When Earth rises, I imagine all the girls down there standing on scales, plucking eyebrows, stuffing bras. I can't see from here my daughter, watching a show about a necessary makeover. Lifting her shirt to the mirror, she squeezes the skin of her beautiful pale belly. Mr. Aldrin, I heard you read from Genesis up here. I didn't have to bring that book. They carved the story of that hijacked apple into my brain years ago. And oxygen? What woman needs it? We've grown so comfortable holding our breath. My dad died when I had 1 year left of the MFA program, and so my last year I mostly wrote dead dad poems, which was probably really painful for the people in my workshop, but was really helpful as a way to put my grieving into something that felt meaningful. It was the summer of hard tomatoes, sucking into themselves like I shied inward when asked, "How is your father?" Like my father's shoulders collapsed toward his ribs. I rubbed them softly while Mom magneted, "Do not resuscitate," to the fridge. I learned to sleep everywhere. Plastic chairs, a bench at the end of his hospital bed, even with the 4th of July outside, or helicopters daily landing on the roof. I pulled food into myself with a new desperation. Dark pudding with skin on top, papery rice noodles, fresh cherries, until I was sick. In the last days, his mind went back to work. He worried about the concrete truck waiting, asked my mom to feed his crew, fell asleep exhausted from cleaning out the shop. I watched his hands move in his sleep, his lips fretting measurements. "It's okay," my mother said. "Just let your father work." Sorry, I think I missed one. I have about 2 more. I'm gonna just look for one poem. Talk amongst yourselves. Dramatic pause. All right, 2 more. Have you seen Instagram lately? I feel like this poem is this. Man, there's a lot hanging on all of us all the time. I want to be one of those women in Wynter with only a few things in her cart. Organic yogurt, flavored water, a small blue orchid for the kitchen window. A quiet Grace Kelly type, or at least Julianne Moore. I'd like my mom jeans to lie real flat, so I'm more mannequin than mom. But where can I hide my daughter, trailing behind a prepubescent caboose asking, "Can I have this?" about a gummy food made to look like a stackable burger. And I say yes to the gummy burger, perch it on the cereal and toilet paper. She loves my legs, draws them as trees in her notebook, her legs tree trunks too, pine branches for our hair. She used to grab the soft of my stomach or extra under my arms when she sucked her thumb. The excess of me a comfort. A friend told me sex is the equivalent of a 7-mile run, so I skipped the gym, fucked a whole lot, until I realized if this were true, the world would be filled with cigarette slim legs, and Jesus, we'd be happy. But then how could I stand with all these things I carry? The church telling me marriage is God's will, my father's crippled hands that don't look like his hands, my son calling from the school auditorium to say, Mom, we are all so scared. A YouTube yogi tells me there's a thumbnail-sized room at the back of my heart. He says it's where my soul lives. I'd like to unzip my skin and bow and arrow myself right in there, stretch out on the couch. Are there flowers or antlers on the mantle? Do I have to split wood for the fire? Who cleans the place up? All right, last poem. Thank you so much for being here. Homage to my being a woman. In the pink light of morning, all my grandmothers come, in vagaries and spring hats, dead eyes shining. They keep me awake with gossip, walk through shower spray, rattle their teeth in drinking glasses. Some evenings they quiet like warm ash in my wood stove, burn just below the surface. Some evenings they flicker light bulbs, squeeze the cheeks of my sleeping children, scream tea kettle warnings. Their fingers are carrot flowers. When they brush my hands, I cry. I push their dirt back into soil, but they squeeze into my silence. Their songs become sorrow songs. They remember their children. They dance a bare-legged dance to the alley and back, tear pages from books, anchor themselves to the walls with names I don't know. They speak in tongues, nap on my couch, snore notes I heard once when the only circus that ever came to my town came. When a woman in ripped tights rode an aging elephant through the tent. They roll their stories in zigzags, pass them around, they say, I insist. My grandmother's voices cling to the ceiling, drip onto our plates, curdle our milk. They click into our dreams, rub their wings together. They pull at my stomach skin, my breasts, smooth the wrinkles of my mouth, read the cards of my regrets. They give us gifts, dead beetles, owl pellets, skulls of baby birds. They have wrapped them in trembling. They are at home in trembling. My grandmothers are turkey feathers and songs we protect like recipes, like star quilts. It's all I've really wanted. Their clothes on old wire lines, western wind in their faces, all of our fingers reaching for each other, for other witch hazel women. In my 40th year, I'm still asking for a sign. A ring in my coffee, a bee on my pillow. Who can call forth my grandmothers? Who can beg them to stay? They have painted my rooms with an itching, a sandpaper moan. I'm trying to give them my children, my abandoned childhood poems. I cannot help but sit among them. I brush their obsidian hair. I oil their brittle bones. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Stacy. I don't know you, but I got a lot of what I was talking about earlier, the goosebumps. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, now I would like to open it to questions from any of you, but also you can also might have questions for each other. You know, I know that you talked a lot in the last 24 hours in particular.
I know we should have saved that.
But you might have actually extra questions that came about. But I'm curious to hear maybe comments and questions from the audience, which is numerous.
Hey, so good to see you. And this is so beautiful. I'm so happy to have it. Well, you said in your intro about sort of
feeling, I don't know, probably insecure is not the word, but like about the idea of like being a narrative poet or writing about your life, like and very directly about your story. And obviously I do that too. And so I'm curious about like the journey of like when you said like who cares, like obviously this is an important story and you read it so beautifully. So like at what point, like how was that journey of like getting out of that headspace of like, you know, feeling like maybe the style wasn't like the cool or you know whatever.
Yeah. I think that I grew up reading a ton of male poets, like classic male poets, and I loved them. I read a lot of like Robert Frost and Wordsworth and Robert Service, but they weren't talking. I remember reading a book by a woman later that talked about trying to fit her life into poetry, and she had the same experience, and she was like, who's writing a poem about washing your skirt and hanging it over her chair? Like, does that belong in those spaces? And I think I entered kind of grad school feeling that same way, like, well, those things are my life, and then there's poetry. But I kept coming back to that. I remember having a conversation with someone in our class and saying like, well, I can't put like miscarriage and breastfeeding in a poem. I just hadn't seen it, and I was in my 30s, but I think all it took was reading a lot more women. I'm happy to give you names, but it was like the 1980s when I think it was like Sharon Olds that read a poem about pregnancy in a room of men, and some of them got up and walked out. It wasn't that long ago, because they felt like we're the bards and those things don't fit in these spaces. And so I think I hadn't seen it, but then I also think writing as much as you write when you're in grad school and just realizing that's what I keep coming back to. And then when other people connect with it, you know, I think I felt both insecure and maybe it felt like it wasn't artsy enough to put those things in. A friend left me a voice note yesterday that her mom is in the hospital and her mom was reading the book, and she said, these feel like such everyday experiences, but somehow it's profound. And I loved that. I was like, I do think the everyday is profound, and I happen to be a woman, and so my everyday is the experience of a woman. But I think for me it just took seeing it more in the world, which is sad that I didn't feel like just saying that makes me want to do things that I haven't seen in the world. But I think I needed to even see it to imagine it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is sad, and it's really important that you're doing it. It's really important that you're doing it.
Thank you.
And, you know, I'm significantly older than you probably, and
48.
for sure. You know, a lot of when you were talking about the men walking out and you mentioned, you know, those things in your poems, and I'm thinking how that relates to, I mean, it used to be like a crime to breastfeed in a public place, and even if there was a little corner that was for breastfeeding, you know, you had to have a blanket over the baby's head, the breast could not be exposed. I mean, like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that, you know, as women over the last, I don't know how many years, but maybe since the 60s, we're really starting to say, you know, we started to say that this is life. This is, you know, there's nothing that needs to be hidden about it.
It's
So-
half the population, and the men also came from women, so it makes sense that it would be represented in art.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, I memean, for that and a lot of other reasons, I think it's really important that
Thank you.
We hear in the Willamette Valley a lot of dreadful things about Idaho. Idaho, we really hear dreadful things about its Moscow. And your poetry at times reflects some of the dreadful things we hear.
Yeah.
And it's clear you're in a healthier place now, and you've decided to stay in Moscow. And what's that like? I mean, are you like the soulful light of sanity in Moscow? Do you have a community?
Our town is rare. I mean, I think two things that I want to say to that is like, yes, I grew up in a tiny town in Wyoming, and it is misogynistic. There was some racism, some homophobia. There were also a lot of people I really love. And I don't think that people are just good or bad. I think a lot of us are the product of the waters we swim in, the channel we have playing on TV. You know, those men that I come from, I feel some bitterness toward them, and I adore them because they're also human and are a product of all these things.
Yeah.
And so I don't just ever think of those places as bad. And I really resist kind of the white liberal tendency to binary things in that way. I think it's more complicated than that. And for us, Moscow has, there are 2 land-grant universities right next to each other there in Washington State University and University of Idaho. So we actually have quite a bit of diversity for how small our town is. But you have a kind of confluence of like farmers and educators and rural blue-collar people. And I can appreciate all of those experiences and those stories. I blame more than anyone the people at the top that are getting rich by feeding them lies about one another and pitting them against each other. So I would say I hope I'm in a healthier place, but for a long time I think I went to the extreme of bitterness and thinking it was all bad, and now I'm more in a place of being mad at the people that are getting the richest off of those kind of places being bad, or I think there's a lot of violence being enacted on those places. I don't know if that's answering your question at all, but our town is filled with art and poetry, and a lot of it reflects the landscape and the farming, and it's a very unique mix. Yeah, we'd love to have you visit anytime.
I will say I did visit, so, and I grew up in Utah, but my dad's from Idaho, and so I was surprised because I had this idea of Idaho. I was like, oh God,
Yeah.
going to Idaho, and Moscow was like kind of a special place.
Yeah, I went to grad school there and I'd never been to Idaho ever. I was like, I moved into town and it's like, it is really beautiful and charming.
There is like an interesting intersection of the liberal educational aspect, and then like the farming and the
But Stacy is the light and
Tyler?
One of the things that I loved hearing Wynter say when she was talking about the art, because I've heard you express it using the same language as about feeling watched
Yeah.
and watched but not seen, which is like, to me, a very interesting thing, because growing up as a man in this culture, that's not something I've experienced. That's something that only through art I've been able to experience, because I think that's very much more of a female experience, especially being watched and not feeling as seen. I just wonder if you guys could explore that a little bit, because I think that's a super interesting concept that where there's overlap between the 2 pieces of work.
Well, I think when you think about being watched, you're thinking of like very superficial layers, right? So I'm thinking of these like very artificial layers of myself, the way I look, my tone, the way I present myself, the way I laugh, my smile, all these like things, right? Being seen, I think, is beyond that. Is like I was mentioning, like the origin of myself, like my true being. Like I mean, honestly, like where is that? Like, and I don't. I think it's one thing to be like seen and accepted on those like superficial levels, and it's another to be like seen as this living, breathing human being that has wants, desires of their own that have maybe nothing to do with you, you know, or anybody else.
Yeah.
And I also feel like in a religious aspect, there's more of punitive watching, where it's like,
Well, there's definitely that too, yeah.
Yeah.
Than there is on men, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
you better not,
Yeah, I think of purity was a huge thing growing up in the evangelical church, and a lot of it was put on the girl. That was like, I remember trying on a dress. I was like 19 and going to a wedding, and my sister-in-law said, well, I feel sorry for the men at that wedding. Like, it was on me if I wore this dress that was going to cause my brothers to stumble. So it was often put on us to be responsible for like the sin of the men. And I think, in that religious context, but also just in our culture. I mean, I'm right now in the throes of, every time I log on to Instagram, it asks me if I want a weight loss drug or something for my wrinkles. I've learned that I have turkey neck thanks to the algorithm of Instagram. I mean, even 20 years outside of religion, I still feel like my body image is so much more important, is what I'm supposed to be thinking of when I think, but my body is like, how I feel when I see my kid enter the room, how I feel when I jump into a river, how I feel when I have an orgasm, like those things feel like my body, and yet it's reduced to this like watching, and to me that's kind of the difference between watching and seeing, but it's on steroids in religion. But I think as women, God, I think you grow up seeing those images in every advertisement, and if you can, it's like someone's capitalizing on these insecurities, but then it was all tied up also with purity and where you go after you die and feminism and, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to my dad about this on a walk the other day, and you think about like those. I'm exploring it as like metrics of joy, so to say. Like, am I capable of enjoying being outside and hiking and smelling and feeling the space, knowing that I have crow's feet, like growing on my face and smiling, and like how much like these layers impact my ability to experience life and feel joy from it. You know?
Yeah. So totally love your guys' vibe, both of you.
Thank you.
As a woman, I love to see this kind of stuff coming up. So I'm pretty excited. I just wanted to know if we can expect more collaboration with both of you guys.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Possibly, I'm down.
Yeah. give us your ideas. Yeah.
Here's an idea. So each one of you create, like you create a poem, you create a painting, and trade.
Yeah.
And then you respond to her painting and you respond to her poetry.
I make a painting.
This time next year.
Yeah.
I feel like my job's way easier.
Right. Well,
I don't know about that.
a little less labor.
Yeah.
We'll meet you guys back here in a year.
We could do a broadside. That'd be really
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm down.
Any other questions?
Wynter.
Yeah.
The eyes are obviously being watched over, but the ears really grab onto me.
Over
There is
here?
a judgment.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's like just this like element of paranoia, right? Like you're hearing and everybody's like, ah! And then I'm just really kind of curious about like how does that like impact the way you present yourself? And you just essentially you become a performer, you know? And when you're performing, you're not actually being your true self. Which is, I know it's interesting because as I'm saying this, I'm a teacher. I talk in front of people all the time. I'm super loud. I'm super excitable, and I do all these things. But then sometimes I come back and it's like, okay, am I performing or is this my true self? So I feel like I'm just always living in this space of like, who am I really? Like, what am I doing? So yeah, there's like the sight, like the sound, the crow is kind of a symbol of like transformation, not so much depth, but like how many go through to actually selves. And then like this thread is like this loosely tethered between like our past and present selves, right? It's not like held on too tight, but like it's always informing one another. Anyways.
I think it's interesting how the figure is actually like you can't see their ears, but the ears are separate.
Fragmented.
A woman. What did I say? A woman. I don't remember what I said.
Me either.
Yeah.
You definitely said that though.
A woman.
A woman.
She's just a woman.
I have I don't know, maybe a bit bizarre question, but you just, quite often, both when you're writing as well as in your painting, there is this notion of, the white canvas, the black canvas being like this thing where you don't know what to put on it. But I was wondering, in both of your cases, whether there have been instances where it was not really a matter of not knowing what to put on the page or on the canvas, knowing very well what you wanted to put there, but that thing or things were so overwhelmingly painful that it was paralyzing to put them on the page or on the canvas. Is that something that you can relate to as a concept?
Mm-hmm. I remember like early on in my work when I was painting nudes and I was doing these like self-portraits and stuff that were like pretty grotesque, and I couldn't paint like the lower half of my body because there was still so much like shame around that. So I was okay with painting my breasts, but I couldn't. So yeah, I do that. I definitely like hit those walls sometimes where I'm like, why? And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I can think of certain poems I've written or that I want to write about some of the like hardest or biggest things that happened to me. For instance, when my dad died, I just was writing like crazy. And I remember my major professor saying, I don't know how you're doing this, because I was in the middle of it. But I have other instances I've gone through where I will try and try and try, because I think that's a big thing in my life. I want to write about it, and it's so big that I just can't quite get it. And sometimes if I find a different avenue into it, I'll like a prompt or a glimpse that's kind of a doorway, but it isn't direct into it, it will be easier. Or sometimes I just need time. Sometimes it takes, I can write about something really painful that was 10 years ago. I can't always write about it in the moment, because I think I don't know how I see it yet. I don't know how I'm processing it or how I would feel about it. Yeah.
When as you get to the end of your poem and you read the last line, I'm always intrigued by the last line, because it's like, when do you know it's done? Like, when do you know that this is the end of this moment or this like story?
It's funny, I think one of my skills is last lines, and so sometimes I do go together too quickly.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my professors saying that, like, you're just jumping to what you know you want the clincher to be. And so I struggle sometimes. I don't know where that comes from, but I definitely want a poem to end in kind of a ringing, like when you hear a bell ring, but it's still reverberating. So I don't want to wrap anything up for anyone. Like, I don't want to say, and then this happened at the end. But to leave a bit of a question or an opening or something that would make a reader want to start again or to revisit again. But I do sometimes kind of know where I'm heading, and then I can jump there too quickly. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know, like, it's definitely the part that I will revisit on a poem the most. I have so many poems that I just don't quite know how to end yet, and that's often the time when I know that at least the bones of a poem are done, is when I've reached that ending, and then I can kind of tinker with the rest. It's probably like the poems that I'm drawn to and love. It's been a joy to read so many different kinds of poets and realize we're all sort of obsessed with different things, and some people are obsessed with the sound, and some people with images, and some people with the line breaks, and some people with the way it looks on a page, and you just kind of follow your weird obsessions, I think.
Another question to follow up is the title, then, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
The Day Apart Tomatoes. Can you tell us about like where that title?
Yeah, that title. I have an essay too that was about that summer. So my dad was dying, and I was trying to grow a stupid fucking garden, and I would go up and water it, and everything was just it was just dying and dry, and so I associated those two things together. But I remember hearing years ago, before I was in grad school or anything, I took a class from the poet Robert Wrigley, who, if you haven't read his stuff, he's a really beautiful poet. He lives in our town. He's the star of the town, actually. Robert Wrigley is the bright light in our town. But he said, a poem is a free line, don't waste it. And so I think about a title is a free line.
Right.
Is a free line, don't waste it. So sometimes it'll be a running title where it goes into the next sentence. Sometimes it's a repeat of a word that's in it. Sometimes it gives the context so that you read that context all the way through. I think with that, I don't know, with that poem, it's weird. That's a weird, because it sounds kind of official, like the summer of hard tomatoes, but like, what does that mean? I want you to read a title and want to read the rest of the poem, or I want the weirdness of that title to ring through the whole thing. And I do think with the fragments of memory, now I associate the summer my dad died with little tomatoes that would never get red. They just were like like little hard green balls, and so I think that's what memory does. It's like, well, that was the summer my dad died. It was also the summer I couldn't grow a tomato to save my life. I went up and ripped it all out in a glorious ceremony, and people in my community garden were watching me just ripping out all my.
I haven't heard Robert Wrigley say that, and I love that. So
Yeah.
much. And then I think it's interesting because it ends with let your father work, and then this was your work also.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I mean?
true.
And
See, and then you do things you didn't even know you were
right,
doing.
yeah.
And other brilliant people can make you feel smart by saying those things. Good questions. How do you title stuff, Wynter? How do you think about titling?
They
paintings?
change actually throughout.
As you're painting it?
I think that It depends. Sometimes, like, I just know from the get-go, and then other times it's just like a work in progress.
same.
Is this one called Fragment? Was that one called Fragment? What's this one?
To be good.
To be good.
This one's called To Be Good.
Which is part of what drew me to it too, was the title.
But I think I started off, like I said, I kind of like approached it from a general idea, like this sense of being watched and like performing and the perfectionism and like the implications that come with that. And I think just when I think, it's like I try and capture like the general idea of like what I'm feeling when I'm making it more so. Sometimes it's like easier to read than others, especially if like I'm doing an abstract work or a figurative work.
I have to make a comment on this one because there's been cases where Wynter dropped off some of her pieces at the gallery, and I said, okay, so what's the title? And there's been only maybe once or twice where you didn't have yet the title. However, the thing that really impressed me, and I was like, wow, okay, is that like I asked her, so what's the title? And she does this thing, I can't even describe, she does this thing where she moves her head sideways, looks down in some sort of infinite space, in her own head, obviously, and within milliseconds. So it's not that she thinks for like a long time. She's like, she looks down, bang, and she hits you with a title that you're like, what? Where did that come from? You know, like, and he's like, so it's evidently inside. It just has to be prompted to be surfaced.
Like it's there.
It's there, and it just comes like so quickly. I'm like, oh, okay.
It's not. I mean, I don't know. To me, like I said, I'm much more of a process painter. Like there's a lot of intuitive like mark making happening, and so the title for me is kind of like a summation of that whole experience, and so it does come at the end.
Yeah, and the irony of this is that also that every time we have a show, I always ask to all the artists, if you have a story about the piece, please let me know so I can put it on the placard. It would be really nice for me to know when people come, you know, and Wynter hates writing a story about her. She absolutely dreads it. But when she does, they're poetry. They're so beautiful. I'm like, you should just write all the time. She dreads it, and then this stuff comes out. It's just poetry, really. Beautiful.
It's
beautiful.
Really rooted in my upbringing. I got put in the strawberry reading group in first grade. I have never forgotten that. Okay? There is something. There's some insecurities with like the stringing the words together, you know, and making it coherent. And like I said, I think there's that performance part of me where I'm like, I want it to be like palatable for other people that are reading it. And so it's just like this added layer of like, I don't know. There's just in grad school, all of it. Like I was so nervous. I remember the first time I had to get up and like present in grad school, and I went to the bathroom and did like 20 push-ups. I read that if I did push-ups, it would like calm my nerves better.
Girl push-ups or male push-ups?
Yeah.
Funny, Dad.
Did it work?
No. I don't know why. I'm fine with painting and showing you my art, but like writing's hard for me.
But it's hard, but you're so good at it. I have to tell you, like there is a piece that I think is the one that you bought, if I recall, when you did your solo show when I was in the old gallery. And when you sent me all the descriptions of every piece, I was on my couch, my husband was on the other couch next to me, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just reading, you know, all the things, information of the placards for a Wynter show. And when I reached that specific piece, I literally, see, even talking about it now is gonna make me cry. I gasped so loud that my husband looked at me like, what's happening to you? And I just burst into magnificent tears that are about to come now. Because they were like, it was like one sentence, I think, just one sentence, but it was so powerful.
Somebody asked me if I ever wanted to be a cow. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
It just like hit me on the face so strongly, you know. It was just like so to the core. And that's exactly when Wynter looks on the ground and thinks, and something comes out. She just hits you on the face with like, goes straight to the core. There's no fluffiness around. It's just purity. It's purity. And it's just so magnificent, you know. And so it's kind of annoying that people made you feel like that you shouldn't write, because I think you write beautifully, actually. Yeah. Okay, any question? But if there aren't, I just wanted to say thank you so much for both of you to just pour your hearts here out for us. And
Thank you for supporting us.
well, that is absolutely an honor and pleasure. It's like living the dream over here. But I really wanted to thank you and also all of you. But before anybody gets up, I'm going to pause this